Okay. So most of you were here, yes. Well, who wasn't here yesterday? Okay, all right. I am not going to. Yesterday I talked a lot about the process of putting the Makerspace in place. And I will happily talk about that afterwards for those of you who are. But today I'm going to try to talk more about what goes on in the Makerspace, the activities in the space, the programs of the space, what we've learned after a year of having a Makerspace at EPL. So that is my focus for this morning. But as with yesterday, questions at any time, beginning, middle, or end, we'll happily take questions. If it's a small group, there's going to be a conversation, or you can watch me talk for an hour. It can go either way. It's really going to be up to you. I've had a lot of coffee this morning, but I feel way better because yesterday I got up at an absurd hour in the morning, took a taxi, sat in an airplane for 2 hours on the runway, and then eventually got here. So yesterday I was feeling decidedly well. This morning I'm feeling a little over-caffeinated, so we'll see how that turns out. Okay, so.
It's a soft ceiling.
Sorry?
It's a soft ceiling.
Good, yeah. I've already insulted your ceiling yesterday, so I won't do that today. Which was also recorded on video yesterday. I think actually yesterday's presentation was recorded as well, so I'm not sure where that will turn out, but somewhere out there it will probably haunt me.
Not yet.
Okay, good. All right, so my intention today then is to do a very, let's make sure we're working good, a very brief overview of how we got to where we are today, and we'll be brief because most of you heard this yesterday. Look at where we are a year later, look at the key areas and what's happening in the space, talk about what's next, and have time for questions throughout at any point in the presentation. So we opened October of the year, so it's a year and a month that we've had a Makerspace. We really started the planning in January of 2013. So for much of 13, and what I talked about yesterday was the process of planning and how we got to where we got to, and selecting equipment and committees, and all of that kind of stuff, and the nightmare of renovation, which is a serious challenge. So the question is, then where are we now? That's a reasonable shot of the Makerspace, giving you a sense of, so that's half of it. It's about 3,500 square feet. It's a large physical space. It used to be our DVD CD area, which got booted to the second floor of the library to create this remarkable space. And to do that, we kicked the whole government documents collection out of the library into the garbage bin, which is how we got to this cool space that we have. That is sort of half of the cool space. You're standing in the front entranceway and looking to your left. And the space really is divided in half. So that's Naomi, one of our Makerspace assistants, Xbox, PS3 gaming station, and that is our Wii station, which is bit in the dust. And this wall here with the 2 gaming stations, this right now has a sound booth installed in it. And actually before I left, the sound booth is 99% done, and the stupid electricians and the minor reno hassle stuff meant it wasn't quite done. But when I go back, I believe we will have a functioning sound booth in our Makerspace, which is really an exciting next step thing, and I'll talk about that. Going around, you see the green screen with some people huddled around one of our fancy computers with some lighting. We have special lighting in the space, and here we have just a table with some miscellaneous little bit kits on it, I think, and I think those are all little bit kits. A couple of other things are just to highlight in the space I talked about yesterday. These are the sound cones. You can see them in place. Look at the sound of the gaming stations projected on the gamer and not blasting through the whole room. And you'll just notice this power cord coming down from the ceiling. So then there's another one there. Dotted throughout the space are power cords, and every computer in the space is on Wi-Fi, and almost every piece of furniture in the space is on wheels, and all of that collectively means you can rearrange the space however you want, whenever you want, and we do that constantly. It's always being changed up for different events and different programs. So, okay. What we wanted to do with the space is make it as open as possible, and as I said yesterday, and as I admitted yesterday, we didn't know what people were going to do with the space when we opened it. We thought we knew, we had some ideas, but we really opened it to see what would work, what would not work, what would the reaction be, what would the popular areas be, what would the pressure points and problems be, and that's what I'm going to try to focus on today. Okay. And the other thing I should emphasize, just to be fair, EPL had a healthy budget to do this. EPL had a lot of space to do this. So I'm not saying this is the way you do a Makerspace. I'm saying this is one way to do a Makerspace. And there's many elements of what we've done and what has succeeded that you can do, you can take, but this is definitely not the only way to do a Makerspace. And this is very much a digital Makerspace. So right out there you guys have got somebody doing yarning and other cool stuff like that. Other Makerspaces have sewing machines. Some Makerspaces have kitchens. Some Makerspaces have tools, like literally hammers and screwdrivers. All of those things are valid creative spaces. We chose the digital route. I just wanted to be clear on that, so no one thinks that EPL saying this is how you have to do a Makerspace. We're saying how we did our Makerspace under our circumstances, with our city, with our place, and our time, and our audience, and our space. All of those things together led us to where we got to. Last time, that's our mayor, Don Ivinson. We've got a great mayor. We're very fortunate. Last year, yesterday when I talked, I mainly talked about the lead up to getting open. We actually opened in October, but actually had the official grand opening in January, February of this year. Partly because the endless renos and finishing and furniture and all those bits and pieces took us a long time. We also, when we opened in October, we literally just opened the doors one day and didn't tell anybody we were open and just sort of waited to see. And then after a day or two, we sort of let the word get out, and then after a day or two, we actually did some, come on in, we're just getting started. After being open for about a month, we started to get the word out, and we let social media do a lot of the promotion. So social media has been remarkable for us because, of course, people into Makerspace type activities are very often on social media, and EPL has a great Twitter feed with what we're up to now. But I think we're pushing 20,000 or so followers on Twitter. We've got lots of activities, so we thought a great social media push. And one of our great promotional successes for this was a tweet up where we invited a bunch of sort of people that we knew were local connected social media types, invited them for a special preview, closed it so only they were there, and for about 3 hours in the evening, I can't remember if we fed them. Feeding people is always good. But we certainly had coffee for sure, and we just did a quick intro, and we just had people play and try all this stuff, and we actually trended #1 in Edmonton briefly on that one. So that's a really, so promotion and reaching out in the social media way is a great way for this kind of event. So this is our opening event. That's a Lego robot which we programmed to walk up and hand the scissors to Don Iveson, our mayor, to cut the ribbon for the space. So we wanted to do something that fit the sort of nature of the space. We wanted it to be visual for the media to capture, so that's a little Lego robot, and that is Don, who, as I said yesterday, was formerly on our library board and is a great, great young mayor. And I don't just say that because I know him personally a little bit, or because he's really good at the library. I think he's a great young mayor, and we're very lucky to have Don Iveson. Okay, so, having said that, there's Don. Okay. One of the things we've learned very quickly was the space itself has become an incredible attraction. So people want to be in the space. We have people trying to book birthday parties in the space because their kids have gone there and had such a great time to come home and say, can I get a birthday party in this space? Our answer is no, in fact, to that. We actually, fortunately, we previously had a conversation at EPL not to do birthday parties in our sort of program rooms with sort of traditional book reading type activities. We'd already made that decision. But they came back at us all over again because people love the Makerspace and the kids' activities we're doing it so much. And the reason we don't do that basically is we just didn't think it made sense to close the space for the public because somebody privately paid to do it. So we have an ongoing tension in the space between programming and creation, and with gaming as well. So if we do a presentation in the space, and I'll talk about some of them and show you some photos of the set, when we do a presentation, sometimes we end up closing the whole space, and that's really problematic for us. So somebody thought, I'm going to come down and do some great creative work on a cool computer, and they come all the way downtown and they walk in the building and find out we're closed because there's a talk, or we're closed because there's a school tour. We've disappointed that person. So we are still struggling with programming, because when we bring like 20 or 30 school kids in, which happens several times a week, and I'll touch on those challenges, we shut the space down, which means the people who are our regulars can't walk in the doors. So there's a real challenge between programming and the open, flexible, creative drop-in activity. And those are two things and a balance that we struggle with on a daily basis. The good news is going forward, we have just completed a renovation to put our sound booth in, and the wall that our sound booth in, on the other side, we've actually built a classroom. So we now actually have a room, a program room, so if we want to do some of our programming activities in the Makerspace, we can do them in the adjacent room and not actually close the space, which is great. And our gamers, we have lots of regular gamers, and they love the gaming, they love the consoles, they love the PC gaming machines. Yeah. But when we do a program, we close it down. So again, that challenge, we're going to have more opportunity going forward not to always have that contrast. So we've hosted presentations. We've had Mark Fröhlenfelder in, who's a really well-known guy who actually runs Make Magazine, who was involved in starting, it was Wired, he started Wired, kind of a very cool, connected guy. Has a great book out called, I think it's called Maker Dad, and it's all about great things you can do with your kids. Very cool guy, came in. And with him, we actually had a contest where classes entered a contest, and one class actually got a 2-hour session with Mark in the evening in the Makerspace. In the evening, we had a talk, which I hosted, and we just had a sort of really informal conversation with him. So people really want to come in and use the kind of space. We've had 3D meetups. The local 3D printing community, Colin, who's behind that group, they've come into our space and we just got together and talked about 3D printing in the community. We have gaming in the community, which I'll talk about a little more. We have informal communities, so we have communities of gamers, we have communities of 3D printers, We just have people who find space and come to the space because the space in and of itself is attractive and interesting. And I talked about it a lot yesterday, but one of the great things about it is it's unexpected. People don't expect a library to have a space like this. And I said it a lot yesterday, but I love surprising people, and I love it when the library does things that people don't expect in a positive way. So everyone's going to do things in a negative way, but I want to do it in a positive way. So we had, this is an example of a few events. This was the city had an open data day, so in cooperation with the city, we had an open data day, and all of the city sent specialists from their particular areas like transit and other areas who were there to be queried by local hackers about their data sets that they owned and made available. And then people went into small groups and worked on a hack fest to work with the data sets from the city. So that was a city partnership that just naturally seemed to fit into our space. But obviously, the space wasn't available for anything else while this was going on. This is the hack fest part of it. I don't know if you notice the graph in the bottom corner. Have you ever attended an event at EPL? We asked all the people who attended this open data day. You'll notice 67% of people have never been to an EPL event before. That touches on something I said yesterday. These kinds of events and these kinds of spaces bring people into the library who otherwise aren't coming to your library. This is not the traditional library service, and this gets people who are not traditional library users, and that's a huge, huge win for us. This is BioWare. This is a success that was almost a disaster. BioWare is a local video company, and our writer-in-residence, we have a UPL writer-in-residence, and he has regular monthly events. If he gets 12 people, he's really happy. That's a good event. 24, he's ecstatic. So he managed to know people at BioWare. We had 2 BioWare writers to come out and talk about writing for a game that BioWare created. We didn't know what would happen. We had 250 show up. We had to turn away 60. We had 180 crammed in the room. Afterwards, we sort of quietly asked the fire marshal what the limit was, and the limit was 60. Oh damn, this is recorded. Oh well. Anyway, we subsequently controlled our numbers for events. But this is just a unique kind of partnership, and having a makerspace gave us credibility that allowed BioWare to be more likely to come and talk to us because we were seen as technically credible. We were seen as digital players in the community. And having a makerspace changes your perception of the community's perception of you. So this event might have happened anyway, but the makerspace really facilitated it and made it catch on and brought a lot of people ever into the space to find out what cool makerspace we have. And there you see that this is the sense of the size of the space. We also do staff training in the space. Obviously, one of the great challenges with cool technology is getting people in branches excited, because we have, actually as of Thursday, we have 18 locations, and by next month we'll have 19 locations in EPL. Just opening gorgeous, 2 gorgeous new libraries opening in rec centers this month and next month. But we want our branch staff to be able to make great recommendations, to be able to tell people what's in the makerspace, and we also, and I'll talk about this more later, but it's an important part of the makerspace is taking the cool things that we try and learn and play with in the makerspace and getting them into the branches. So the idea is this doesn't just happen in Milliner, this also happens in all soon-to-be 19 locations. So this was all of the managers and many of the librarians and a mix of other people, and we basically set up stations. And so this one on the bottom here that's Lego robotics. I don't know if you guys have used Lego, but those are the little smart controllers that have the sensors and programming and the interface, and there's all these arms and legs and stuff you can do, and you can build truly remarkable things with them. So we had our staff rotate through stations, and in each station work through an exercise. It was an extremely popular meeting. People walked away saying, okay, I get it now. Now I see how this can be used. And the question we asked was, how would you use these things in programs? Because we don't see this as Makerspace digital here, library programming here. We see this as a total integration. So library programming can be Makerspace digital, or library programming can incorporate Makerspace digital elements and still be we have something called Sing, Sign, Laugh, and Learn. We could have it as part of that. We could have story time, we could have something involved in this. We could have lots of programs where digital becomes part of it. And we really want to get away from the idea that there's the library and there's digital. Digital is as core to what we do. Digital is part of everything we do. And this was a great way to get hands-on experience, because we want our leadership group to go back to their branches and say to their LAs or their people in the program, hey, you should try this. I did it. And so I would say, if I can figure this stuff out, you can figure this stuff out. And some of this I can figure it out, but that's just me, not you. Mark Frohenfelder, there was Mark. That was actually the class that actually won, and he got to do some cool stuff with them. He's in front of our green screen there, as I talked about. So you paint a wall green, you have a green screen. It's the cheapest, simplest thing you could ever possibly do in a space. If you've got a big wall, you can paint it green. You can say you've got a makerspace, buy a video camera for $200. it's pretty damn cheap. You can do some very cheap and simple wins in locations without investing the kind of money that we may have invested. And you notice we got the crappy tables here, so like this was part of the thing, like some of the furniture didn't arrive, so we got these nasty folded crappy tables. We have nicer ones now. That's the kind of stuff we were using then. Oh, I showed those guys already. Okay, school tours. I touched on this yesterday. One of our great challenges with school tours, and one of the great challenges with the Makerspace, is success. And in libraries, we sometimes struggle with success. I've often found this with databases. You buy a database, and it has limited users, and you think, I can't promote it too much because if I promote it too much. Or we have Hoopla at RPL. I don't know if you guys have Hoopla.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as you know, it's a pay-as-you-go service. So the more we promote it, the more it costs us. And so that's the kind of case where success can be challenging sometimes. And Hoopla costs us a lot. Holy crap, it's very successful, which is great, but it's very expensive. Same thing here. We started with the City Hall School, which happens to be right across the street from us, and we had a school group most weeks through the school year. But then the word got out. Our branch of staff are visiting schools, schools hear about us, schools hear from teachers, talk to teachers, talk to teachers. We're getting to the point there where we actually have a problem. So we've done two things right now, which we've just talked about in the last months about how to cope with this. One is we've had to change our tours. We have a very simple tour, which is basically a walk and point, 1 hour tour, which one staff person can do with the teacher present. We also have our more in-depth tours, which is a hands-on station tour, more like you saw when the staff were there. You've got like a Lego station and a different station. That takes at least 3 staff to do. So we bring up somebody from the children's library usually, we have one of our staff, if we're lucky, one of our lit band people can jump in. And in that case, it's a 2-hour session, it's hands-on, it's exploration, and it's a much more engaged session. We're doing those for the 4 to 6s. We're doing the simpler tours for the 1s to 3s. Because we just felt that we only have so much time and energy. We cannot do the setup and the 2-hour tour many, many times a week. Our capacity with 4 Makerspace assistants, only one of them is full-time, is limited, even though we've got crazy hours. The school tours all happen right between 9 and 3 on a weekday. So our staff are covered over a broad range between those times. We're really struggling. I shouldn't say struggling, we are struggling with success. Incredible engagement though. The kids love these tours and learn stuff without knowing they're learning stuff. This is Holly, one of the librarians, one of the leads in the Makerspace, has been an incredibly important part of the success of the Makerspace, standing in front of our espresso book machine. And I touched on this one yesterday. Very expensive, very cool machine. Not a small purchase, not a purchase to make casually, but the kids love it. And when it's on, our space is very digital, as I said. So 3D printers, you see something physically happening. But a lot of what's happening is people being creative on cool computers, which is kind of boring to look at because it's somebody in a screen. The nice thing about the espresso book machine is it's kind of Rube Goldberg-esque. You know, it's got all sorts of stuff happening. So you've got a printer at one end, behind Holly, that's a black and white printer. At the other end is an inkjet cover printer. And they come into the middle, and it's very cool. The cover comes in here, the paper comes in here. One thing scrapes it, something else glues it, puts it down, holds it, cuts it, spins it, cuts it, spins it, cuts it, spins it, spits it under 10 minutes. And the kids love that. They love to actually physically see something. And in some cases, when we've been able to do it, it's been very difficult. But we actually, in some cases, we're actually able, by prior arrangement, to have a book ready to go, and we printed copies of the book for the kids while they were there. Usually we were just able to do one and then send them one later. So that kind of thing is possible, but challenging. In the same way, 3D printing, people love 3D printing, and I'll talk about it a little more, but programming with 3D printing is challenging because people say, can we come in and all print, we've got 12 people, we'd like to come in and all print something while we're here for 2 hours. Well, it turns out one object can take 7 hours. So 12 kids' objects is a 24-hour print job. It can't be done. So what we're really emphasizing is the modeling aspect as the program. You need to learn to model. That's the real skill set. The submission and printing requires some help, but it's the modeling that it gets the brain thinking about 3D objects and relationships and how you print and how you output stuff. So modeling is really the key to that one. I just love these pictures of kids. They're just great, happy, interested, engaged kids. Look at that. How often do you see young boys highly engaged in library events and library tours? Not always. I'm just saying, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Because it's a different kind of activity, you sometimes engage people differently or engage somebody who wouldn't have been engaged in a more traditional library tour. So this is just another great shot. I showed this yesterday, sorry, but I just liked my favorite part of the day was the Makerspace at RPL. I liked it because I learned so much. I used to think a lot of these things, like the 3D printing, were impossible. I just love that quote. I just think that's so sweet. And so a kid's eyes have been opened, and then the City Hall School tweeted that at the bottom. And the Twitter activity and the social media activity has been fantastic because people routinely are tweeting and acting and talking about us in that space, and that's great for us. 3D printing, okay, let me get caught up in my notes there. I actually have notes. I don't usually have notes. It's not likely to have notes, but I've actually got notes today, so I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything obvious. So the 3D printing, there's two aspects to this. One is, this slide, I think we're actually pushing 2,000 print jobs in the 3D printers now in about 13 months. That's a lot of print jobs. That's a lot of, and there's some repeat customers, but that's a lot of it, primarily individuals who've come in and actually done 3D printing. We've had some remarkably interesting stories. I told the story yesterday about a grandfather. Another interesting story of the Makerspace. We had a woman who was a semi-regular user who mainly was trying to just use Facebook on our computers, which is really not an allowed use of our computers because there's 50 other machines in the building that can do Facebook, and our expensive high-end computers with cool software are not meant to do Facebook. And also our high-end computers, as I said yesterday, have no time limits. So somebody could come in and do Facebook for 10 hours on our machine, and that's really not an appropriate use of the machine or the space or anything. We had one of those ladies who came in, and to the great credit of our Makerspace, they engaged with her, talked to her, and got her interested in 3D modeling. Turned out, it was near Christmas, so that was in our first year. She actually ended up 3D modeling a heart with her mother's name on and printed it, and printed her mother's Christmas present. We were talking about a person who's basically a street person, a person who is living rough, a person whose life is a mess, and a person who 3D printed her mother's Christmas present. That, again, as I said about my grandfather's story yesterday, is not a typical library experience. That is what I would call a transformational experience. And I would also say, where else, anywhere, would that person have the opportunity to interact with that technology? Nowhere. That person's probably not allowed to hang around on the wall for more than 20 minutes without getting booted. What commercial outlet, which she has no money. So just think about the opportunity you have as an open, shared public space to bring this kind of technology into that space, expose people and give people access to this, who would never be able to do this otherwise, would never have considered it. It's not like she came in that morning and said, I want a 3D print. That was beyond her comprehension to even think about asking to do that, and yet she did that, and we facilitated that, and that's a very unique, I think, powerful thing. So we added a third printer, which has got our backlog dramatically under control, and you can see the printer. Kyle has got his printers in the back of the library. You can see we actually have 3 Machina printers. And when we started this process, I didn't know Machina existed. I didn't know there was a local print maker. Somebody tweeted us or somebody said, hey, did you know there's a local 3D printer maker? We talked to Kyle. We ended up using the unit. And it's been great for us because of local support. For us, that's been really, really valuable. So we teach courses in 3D printing. So the most obvious one, obviously, is the Intro to 3D Printing, which is basically really Intro to 3D Modeling. That's really what it's about. We talk a little about the printing. Our original course, as it evolved, is we talked too much about the printing and realized people don't really need to know a lot about the guts of the printing. They need to know how to make a good model. Good models print well. It's simple. Bad models don't. So helping people make good models is really where our teaching was. But we've also then evolved beyond that to things like print and play, 3D printing for board gamers. We have a great gaming community, and we'll talk about the gaming community in different ways. But we have print and play nights where we encourage people to come and play board games or play games and then print parts for their games or think about printing parts for their games. So you engage the board gamers, but you engage the 3D printing, and you kind of make a connection between sort of connected, disparate, but related communities. So that's a great opportunity. We've also done things like simple jewelry design for 3D printing. And as the year progresses, we're looking forward to next year. We're going to try to do more, especially now with our third printer. Our backlog got up to 10 weeks for print jobs. I said that yesterday. Actually, that was our worst point. We're down to less than 2 and maybe even 1 week. It's remarkable. With that less backlog, we're hoping to do some more timely stuff. We may be a little late for Christmas. Unfortunately, just because by the time we get back, it's December. But we're envisioning things like an event that says, print the Easter Bunny event. So we kind of do one-off events that focus on a theme or an upcoming something. I don't know what it might be. We haven't quite figured that out yet. We just had a planning meeting for next year already. But the idea is getting a little more focused. The intro to 3D printing will always carry on. We're going to need that. But the idea of more targeted kind of events. And as I said before, the modeling of 3D printing is an activity that can happen in the branches. You don't have to be downtown with a Makerspace to do modeling. Tinkercad is a free website, tinkercad.com. Great introductions, great video tutorials, and produces reasonable 3D models. That's what most of our 3D modeling is done. It's a free website. People can work on it at home. They can submit their jobs via Tinkercad. Great, great site. Really, really helpful site. And free. Free is good. Free is my favorite price. this is a cute guy with his little Dr. Who TARDIS thing, just an example. And that's you know, it looks huge in the one on the right, you can see the actual scale on the left, obviously. Just some interesting objects that have been printed. We've got to more colors, so there's more filaments, more colors, and I don't know if the wood one, I don't think I see the wood one up there. There's actually a wood-based fiber filament that we've been using. And the cool thing about the wood-based fiber for the 3D printers is the wood-based fiber is actually paintable, whereas the plastics are very hard to paint. So suddenly you have the opportunity to produce something that can be painted or modified afterwards. So that's kind of neat. Oh, I think is that the wood filament? Is that the wood? I'm not sure.
That looks like it.
Yeah.
Because it's a light, the new wood filament, yeah, it's nice like that, yeah.
Yeah, it does like that. I love this story. This is a gentleman who came into our Makerspace and used our 3D printer to print the parts for his home 3D printer. Now that's pretty cool. I think that is pretty amazing. So that's kind of very meta. Like a printer prints a printer, prints a printer, prints a printer, and ultimately, I mean, obviously you can see this is not something you can casually do, and obviously he didn't print the wood bits, but there are parts, like obvious parts, like that is 3D printed. Most of the pieces of plastic there are 3D printed. And so he came into our space and made himself a 3D printer. And in fact, next year, one of our goals, one of our programs is probably going to be running a course on making your own 3D printer. And we will, over a series of weeks, make a very small little 3D printer that people observe and watch us do that as a learning tool for us, but also as an engagement tool for people to show people, again, that this is a technology that not only can you use, but you can make and create and interact with. So it's not, as I mentioned yesterday, not like a toaster that you buy and throw away. It's something you can actually make and fix and adjust and work with. So yeah, that was that guy there. I love that. Okay. New stuff keeps happening. All right. This is a little 3D scanner that we bought this year, just a month or two ago. Oh, August 22nd. There it is. As usual, it's a tweet. If you look for RPL.ca on Twitter, you get a pretty good idea what's going on in our lives. There's a lot of activity there typically. Ben is one of our Makerspaces. He's the full-time. He's a library assistant who happens to be a home tinkerer, genius, kind of geekish, nerdish kind of guy. Also was a teacher. Remarkable skill set. Full-time Makerspace assistant, fantastic guy. Did that tweet for us. We first looked at 3D scanning, which would have been early in 2013. Some of the machines were like $5,000 or $10,000. It was just stupid. It was like, well, clearly we're not doing that. This little one, I think, was $600. So one of the other things is the scale and the price of these things keeps dropping. So things that were not attainable or not considerable are now cheaply doable. So this is pretty limited. It can only do things that are about that big. And it takes a really long time. It's more like 3D printing than I had hoped. In that it takes a really long time to scan something well, in the same way it takes a really long time to print something well. I don't know what I envisioned. I envisioned a magical Star Trek-ish thing that, no. This thing can take hours to scan something, in the same way it takes hours to print something. Maybe really obvious in retrospect, but that's just how the technology works. So new stuff keeps happening, and we will keep adding new stuff. There's Holly, I used that slide yesterday. We still have the PS3 and the Xbox gaming consoles, and you saw that with the sound cones above them. Hugely popular, and also hugely challenging. Just the day before I left to come here, I wrote a banning letter. Somebody got banned for 12 months from the library. Because I've got in a fight over whose controller was next. The fight went into the basement, the fight went across the street. I'd already banned the guy for 3 months, and previously banned the guy for 1 week. He's toast for a year. Gaming in a downtown urban setting sometimes attracts people whose behaviors are not as comfortable as we would like. We are thrilled that these people come in and use the space. We want to be a space. We want to give kids who've got nothing to do all day something cool and fun and positive and productive to do. Every once in a while, a very small percentage of them have some challenges for us. Really small, but I banned a guy for a year. I never banned people in my previous sort of web world that I worked in. Working in the Makerspace, I get to ban people sometimes. I hate doing it, but the reality is every once in a while we have to do that kind of stuff. We've had some great interactions on great community, so that's one community which can be challenging at times, and the demand on this has been really challenging. We actually had to create, one of my web developers developed a simple booking system for gaming, because we basically were keeping it really simple. It's like a piece of paper and you wrote your name on it. It got to be ridiculous. People were writing their names down as like, just goofy like street nicknames, and like, we didn't know who these people were. It was kind of funny, but it also wasn't funny. So it was like, who's on there? The console, wait a second, one of our consoles might be missing. Who was just there and his name is like XXX or RIP or I don't know, Dirt or something. It's like, what the hell are you going to do with the guy's name Dirt written down on a piece of paper? It's no good. So what we actually did is we now use a library card. And you actually have to use our library card to book a controller and to book time. So it's unfortunate, but we had to put that in place. We also had to do it because of the demand. We just had people constantly coming in, wanting to do gaming. We had to manage the time, and people would be on for hours and hours and hours. And we had a group of players, a young group of guys we called the FIFA boys, who loved playing FIFA, which is a great, I think it's an Xbox game, FIFA 14. They played FIFA endlessly. But the problem was, between the 6 or 8 or 9 kids, they could manage to continuously book the gaming stations, and like for the whole day, FIFA would be played on one station, which was great. And this was a group of kids who came together and played in the library, which we loved. The downside was no one else could get on that unit. So we had to push back and struggle with that a little bit. But on the more positive side, without any of those challenges, League of Legends is a great gaming. We have Friday night, every second Friday night, League of Legends gaming night. We get 15 to 50 kids gaming in the space doing League of Legends. We set up laptops, they play, tournaments, etc. We've done a retro gaming night that's been really fun. We've done team gaming activities. We're looking at other kinds of gaming stuff, and that's an interesting community, the gamers, because we have video games that can be borrowed, and remarkably, well, not remarkably at all, many people have no idea. It's like so many things at the library. Everybody knows, as I said this yesterday, everybody knows we have books. A lot of people still don't know we have a Makerspace, despite all the PR. A lot of people have no idea we've loaned video games. We've been doing, I think we've been loaning video games for 2 years now, or more, probably. People still don't know that. So connecting with these communities is fantastic because it gets a different group of people aware of the library, using the library. And yeah, great. Yeah. So yeah, policy, I talked about we need a library card. Oh, the other one, M games. Our library collection has up to M games in it. We don't have, I don't believe we have adult games in our collection, but we have M games. And M games can be pretty wild, including like, putting axes through heads of zombies with blood flying around. Like gaming is pretty intense stuff. And we have these gorgeous big 60-inch screens on the wall. We had a mom in one day who was with her kid, I think, playing, doing drop-in, doing Lego robotics or little bits of something completely cool and makerspace and great, who was not happy to see zombies having axes put through their heads on a TV in the space. That led us to deciding, after some back and forth conversations, that M games are no longer played in the space. We are now, and so which unfortunately meant some of our regulars disappeared. We had a group of Call of Duty guys who came in every morning, and these were rough guys in the sense of their life. They were leading a rough life. They'd come in cold in the mornings, and they'd come in right at 9 o'clock and play Call of Duty for a couple of hours. That was probably one of the highlights of their day. Unfortunately, we stopped doing M games, we lost those guys. I was very sorry about that. We are trying, again looking forward, we're trying to come up with a policy where we have times, and it'll probably be like 9 to 11 on mornings, we say this is mature gaming time. So that because the decision was we are fine with mature games being played as long as there's reasonable warning and signage. So if people come in and say, oh, it's mature gaming time, I'll choose maybe not to sit at that space. But the open drop in anybody can play mature games at any time has disappeared for us, and that was challenging. The Wii console got booted out so we could create room to put our sound booths in the wall where it was, and the booking system I talked about already was a handcrafted system that's helped us a lot in managing that.
Peter,
Yeah.
what was the change in the library card policy?
We actually required a library card.
We went that before?
No, before it was like we put your name on a piece of paper and we were.
That was just for the games? You don't need the card for anything else?
No, you don't actually need it to, no, the only thing you need a card for is to actually play. You can sit down and use a computer all day, you can 3D print, you can espresso book machine, you can do digital conversion station, you can use the green screen, you can borrow a camera, you can do something else I'm forgetting, I'm sure, without a library card. The idea, and some of you heard this yesterday, the idea with this is to not have barriers. We don't need a rule, we don't need a policy, we don't need a card, we don't have one. We don't want to put barriers in place. We don't want to make this hard. We want to make this drop-in easy, use it, and be straightforward. But the library card came into the game just because the demand was there, the challenge was there, it just was becoming unmanageable. And I talked about the tension earlier between creative activities, programming, and gaming. And gaming had become to the point where it's sort of the vibe of gaming and the dynamic of that, managing that group, got to the point where it was detracting from the overall space, and that was not, the balance was wrong. So all of those things happen. So this is, that's a League of Legends night, I believe. Yes, that's a League of Legends tournament going on. See, that's a really nice mix. That's a pretty good turnout. And you notice they're stereotypically almost all young men. I'm not sure if there's a woman in that picture or not. She's certainly, if there is one there, she's in the minority. Not that women don't game, they game a lot, but this particular game seems to appeal to younger guys. That might be a woman. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The important thing is we're getting young guys into the library actively engaged, and that's a good thing, because they're not always the easiest demographic for us to connect with and get into the library. So that's It's there. Oh, there's a bunch of them again. And definitely not a woman to be seen there. Yeah. Retro gaming night. Oh, woman, yay. We've got some crazy, I'm not sure what this is, some crazy old gaming console. Some of you are into gaming or will recognize some of that. So we actually do retro gaming nights. People bring really old, strange, funky games, and we play retro games in the space sometimes for fun. Well, another cool new thing, we just got the Oculus Rift. I don't know if you know it. It's a virtual reality gaming thing. You put this on and you see the world around, you see a projected world around you. Really popular. We've been using it mainly for demos. It does actually have the opportunity to, and get caught up here in notes. It actually has the developers platform, so it's actually intended for developers. So we have game development software on our creative computers. So the idea would be, and I don't think it's happened yet, that people could actually develop against these headsets and actually build games against these. Right now we're using it mainly for demo and for just people to see. I know, I heard from Holly that we had a school group in this last week, I forgot which day, and the teacher put these on and didn't sit down. We always tell people sit down before you put them on. She put them on standing up and like a shark moved or something, and she freaked out. And of course the kids thought it was the greatest tour group ever. Because her teacher freaked out with these things in her face. She's already looking ridiculous anyway. Anyway, so I tried them and actually after 20 seconds felt nauseous. I am not a person to use these things. They're actually, the graphics are still relatively basic, but the potential here is really interesting. And just really what we're trying to illustrate is we are always trying to look for what is interesting and new out there and try to get it into the space for people to get their hands on it, for Edmontonians to try something they wouldn't get their hands on, to see it, to imagine it, to see the possibilities of it that they wouldn't otherwise do. So that's why we have the Oculus Rift. I think it was $400. I think we got it off Kickstarter. We actually order stuff off Kickstarter now sometimes because that's where the cool stuff is. I got a 3D printer on order from Kickstarter, which shows you the hazards of it. I think I ordered it in March. It still hasn't come in yet. It's been delayed till March of next year. Whether we'll ever see anything for that $300, I don't know. But it was a very cool little 3D printer that had an app that you could print off an iPad, which we thought for kids type activities might be great. Whether we ever get it or not, I don't know. But you got to take that chance and try some interesting different technology. And the Makerspace for us is a place to try different technology. And we're willing to take a $400 run at something. If it fails, it fails. And if it succeeds, it succeeds. I mean, $400, pretty easy fail. You can live with that. $4,000 is a little harder. $40,000, you're in a lot of trouble. Right? It's like anything else. And again, that's a tweet, of course. I don't know, this is just the theme of this talk, this tweet showing it. The green wall. I talked about that already, how easy that is to do, but there's actually some really interesting challenges with this. We've had some great successes and we've had some really interesting challenges. An example of success is a guy named Mike, we call the Skyrim guy, who plays a video game called Skyrim and then captures that video game, the action in the game, and has made a movie out of captured action in this Skyrim video game. And we actually showed that in the space. He invited his friends. We actually had 40 people come out and watch his Skyrim movie that he made in the space, on the screen in the space. I love that. I love the connection with that. I love that activity of that. We've had people do 3D scanning, and we've had people do, a guy shot part of his video for his rap music or beats that he can put together in space. He shot some of that against our green screen. We've had some downsides with the green screen, and we've had, just last week, somebody said, I'd like to go up the green screen, can you close the Makerspace for me? Because to use a green screen well, if you're a serious filmmaker, you need silence. Ironically, one of the things the library is really bad at is silence. Given our public image and the reality, we're very bad at silence. We're always too noisy. There's always phones ringing. There's activity. So the green screen is of value. The projector is essential for doing presentation, but we actually struggle with using the green screen the way a dedicated film person would want to use it. It's just not, we're just too busy. There's just too much going on for it to work well. What we will do routinely is close the gaming area. So the gaming area is just around here. If somebody needs that, we will close the gaming area. So, okay, there'll be people coming and going. The creative computers will be there, the staff will be there, the 3D printers will be going, but you want to have gamers right around you at least, and that's lets people do photography against it, but really not sound type of filming. So a success but a challenge with that. Creative workstations. So I don't know if I showed as good a photo yesterday. So those are the iMacs, beautiful all-in-one iMacs, and then less beautiful but still all-in-one Dells. So we have 4 iMacs and 4 Dells in this space, 8 creative computers. They have deep freeze on them, which I talked about yesterday, which allows people to download and play on these things. They're not locked down. There's no library card requirement. There's no time limit on these things. You can come in and use them all day if you are using them for any kind of appropriate creative activity. The challenge then, of course, becomes, as I said yesterday, people want to come in and use Facebook all day, and that's not allowed. And we have lots of interesting conversations around that.
Peter,
Yeah.
what do you do if there is more people want to use the computers for the same reason, but it's already occupied?
It doesn't happen a lot. We just have conversations, go and say, how are you doing? Are you done? Or what are you working on? And people, because I mean, even when I say you can be here all day, most people are there for an hour or two. Like, there's a pretty good steady turnover. We've got some of our regulars, like Mike, the Skyrim guy, is a regular. We see him a lot. There's several regulars, but generally people come in, work for an hour or two, and are done, and we can kind of negotiate. We did try. I think we have. I believe we ordered a 9th one just to help cope, another iMac, because the Macs are more popular than the Dells. And as I said yesterday, these were the first Macs we ever offered in our public space in the library. So the Makerspace is a great sort of Trojan horse to bring new technology into the library. Our IT group wouldn't have ever allowed Macs into space if they had a choice. We needed them for this, so they're here. And we're coping. It's not always ideal, but they're there. Yeah. Okay. The espresso book machine. This is, I talked about it a little yesterday. We've had great success with this. We've had wonderful people coming in and using it. We print several hundred to I think the best month was 500 copies in a single month got printed. A quiet month might only be a couple of hundred copies. People use this thing. They basically give us a PDF of the cover. They give us a PDF of the contents. We help them make sure it's laid out. We submit the job, and 10 minutes later they have a book. A soft cover book, color cover, black and white contents. It looks pretty professional. It looks pretty good, actually. They're quite impressive. And the price is very reasonable. We charge basically $5 for the base and 5 cents a page, which means a 100-page book is $10. And in fact, if you get a really big book, it's almost cheaper than photocopy, which is ironic but true. It's not really our intention, but that's, if you get to like 500 pages, you're actually better off making a book out of it than having 500 crappy pieces of paper out of a photocopy. That's just the way our printing works. I talked yesterday about the grandfather, so I won't tell that story again, but I was there. There was a day when an older lady who had written a children's book and had illustrated it, but it wasn't real yet. It was just like in a Word doc or whatever. She came into the space, worked with the Makerspace assistants, they got it into Photoshop, they got it laid out for her, they got it saved as PDFs, they got it submitted. None of that work was me. I just happened to be there the day she picked it up. I'm the manager, I get to get the glory every once in a while. I just happened to be there the day she picked it up. And we handed her, I think it was 15 or 20 copies of this beautiful bright blue cover with an orange kind of fish on it, not Nemo-like at all, but the colors were beautiful. And she did this very clever thing where there was 2 stories. So if you turn the book this way, it was one story, you turn it the other way, it was another story. And it had just come out beautifully. I happened to be there when she picked it up, and she literally had tears in her eyes as we handed her her book. Because something that she always dreamed of, something she created, was real and tangible in her hands. And that's a powerful, wonderful moment. I just happened to be lucky enough to be there. But those kind of things happen regularly. That's not like that's just the only time I happen to be lucky enough to be the person there, because I'm usually buzzing in and out to see what's going on, but I'm not typically there day after day. So the espresso book machine is a great product, but as I said yesterday, it's really, really challenging. We had to fly the tech in from the States to fix it last month, and that was a very expensive thing as it turned out.
What's your policy on how much time a staff person could spend with someone like that? Like, do they actually go step by step and actually do it with them, or would they just explain it to them and expect them to do it themselves?
It's in the middle. Our staff will give as much time as they possibly can. So if it's a quiet morning, and the mornings are typically quieter, if it's a quiet morning, you can get 2 straight hours from our staff person. If they can do that, they're going to do that. Otherwise, they will get you started and they will check in and check in and check in and check in. So we provide a lot of help. We try as much as possible to teach people to do it, but absolutely, it is a staff-intensive service. This is not a there it is, good luck service. That's not the way we operate. And that's challenging because we only have so many staff and there's a lot of different activities in the space. But it is a staff-intensive service. We do not, as I think said yesterday, we do not edit the books.
Yeah.
Right? So if your writing sucks, we're going to print a book and your writing will still suck. Those are the breaks. We can't help you with that. If you've got typos, and so the funny thing is we're talking to Makerspace systems about printing proofs. We now require, unless somebody's like willing to sign their life away, we require them to get a physical proof and approve the proof before we do a big print run. Because one of the things that my Makerspace system said to me is, as soon as you see it physically, you see typos you never see on the screen. There's something like going through and going, oh my God. So we nearly always get a single proof printed and then they do a run. And runs for us are like 10, 20, 50 is like the most we've ever done. And if it's more than 50, we would say go to a commercial shop anyway. We are not going to do commercial level print production. We're not going to do commercial level 3D printing. We are not a commercial shop. We are a learning, creative, entrepreneurial, getting started shop. And so that's the important part of the expressive work machine. Really expensive thing, really unique. It's the only one in Edmonton. It may be the only one in Alberta, I'm not sure. I don't know if your university has one or not. No? Not sure. Yeah, anyway, our university got rid of ours just after we got ours. Kits and bits, okay. We've got a bunch of different kinds of kits. One of the things that I had, that's a Lego robot at the bottom, and you can see that actually looks like a robot. But people have done, somebody actually built a guitar out of these things. It was remarkable. You had a slider, and as you touched the slider, it sensed where you were in the slider and played a different tune. So when I say it's a robot, it's not just a robot. Somebody made a whack-a-mole out of these things. You can do remarkably creative things with these. And there's lots of online stuff, and there's software that comes from Lego that helps you do that stuff. So the block in the middle is the sensor. They can run around, they can throw things, they can sense light, they can sense patterns on the floor. I came in one Monday, and there's like masking tape on the floor, and I said, what happened in the weekend? Oh, that's the race course for the robots. So the robots are actually sensing lines, and they're trying to program a robot to follow a pattern and stop between here and here. So you think about what that means, and this is a program done for dads, moms and dads, and kids. So you've got youngish kids who are interacting with technology and programming it to react to do an action or react to sensors or inputs. It's actually a remarkable thing, and they love it, and it's hugely popular. The only problem we have is every Lego robotics kit is $400. So it's not a cheap investment, but it's a great investment, in all honesty, in terms of a single fun thing to do. And there is a learning curve. This is not trivial, but it's also not that hard either. It's nicely in the middle. Like Arduinos and those kind of things, they're harder. Raspberry Pis, which we don't have it up there, but it's one, yeah. The Raspberry Pis, they're harder to work with. You have to work at it longer to get something. You can sit down with a robot, snap things together, and in 30 minutes have some success. In an hour or two, have some success. Coming back over a couple of weeks, have some serious success. So it's the kind of thing that we like, where the point of entry, you get some positive back with relatively little energy. You've got to work at it, but you get something back. Other things, you work and work and work and work, and maybe you don't get much back for weeks, potentially. With something like the Lego robotics, really, really successful, and it worked really well for us. As I said, these are the kind of things. We now have, our 2 branches that got renovated earlier this year have Lego robots. The 2 new ones that are opening this year have Lego robots. I think I'm ordering robots for the branch that's opening early next year, and in the new budget year, we're ordering robots for another 4 branches. So you will soon have robots in half our branches, and we will probably, budget permitting, get 5 or more and put them in a kit and have kits that people can look. We have like laptop kits, iPad kits, Makey kits, iPad mini kits, there's something else I'm missing, gaming kits. So a branch doesn't have to, so they say I want to do a program that involves Lego robots, they'll be able to just book a kit, it'll get shipped and then they'll unpack it and go. Now, there's some training and support with that. That's not completely easy, but we actually offer courses on that. We have a 2-part course. The first part is sort of the basics of robotics and working with Lego, and the second part is working with the sensors and getting some more advanced stuff. And we have like 15 or 20 staff who will attend that with 1 or 2 people leading it. And the feedback on that, we've had a couple of go-arounds, and people have loved it. And they've loved it for 2 reasons. One is they walked in going, I don't understand technology. This is not the kind of thing I do. This is not me. And at the end of an hour or 2, have gone, wow, I did this. This is not that hard. And this is cool. And not only is it cool, because cool is good. Not that cool is ever bad, because libraries really aren't really cool. We try to be cool, but we're old and we're established. We can't actually be cool. At least I can't. I know what you guys do. I can't actually be cool even if I want to be. And my daughter can tell you that. But this is actually, what they see at the end of the day is not just the coolness, but they see the value in it. They see the learning that they had, and they see how they're actually using basic programming concepts to work with a cool, fun piece of technology, and how it's a learning activity, how it's an unusual, different, engaged learning activity. So it's not just cool, because cool alone is not good enough.
When you're buying Lego robots for the branches, how many are you buying?
5.
Number?
Pack of 5, yeah.
Per branch?
Per
And
branch.
how many kids can use that at once?
You kind of pair them up typically, so you have 2 kids per set, so that'd be like a small program of 10 kids. So it's a small program. We're not talking like a mass room of 30. You're talking about a relatively small, and it's got to be small because then 1 staff person can handle it. You get more than that, you're into that 2nd and 3rd staff person, and the scale just gets to be really challenging. Yeah. But so you're talking $2,000 in robots.
Yeah.
Like it's a serious hit. Like that's the trouble. I wish they were like a quarter of the price, but they're not. But the reality is with the technology and what's in them, it's not an unreasonable price. It's just that's what the price is. Yeah. But they're really interesting and really valuable. Makeys we use to do the banana piano kind of stuff I talked about yesterday, which some of you may have seen. You can Google banana pianos and you'll see cool things. It's a fun, simple thing. Little bits. Makers are kind of cool, but as somebody said, they're a bit of a one-trick pony. The little bits are actually something that, in terms of a point of entry, little bits are a great point of entry because little bits are small, snap-together electronics kits. The price point is more like $99 to $150 per kit, but several kits can work together on a kit. And they actually have a cloud bit now, which actually has a little Wi-Fi thing, so you can actually build a little electronics thing, and you can do things like little sensors with them. People are doing funny things like every time somebody walks by something, the little bit senses it and sends a tweet because they had a little Wi-Fi cloud and do an if then else at the website. There's a website out there called not if else, if then, or if then next, whatever. I'll think of it later. Where basically you give it simple commands and it does things like if this input is send this tweet to this place. So you can get a tweet saying, hey, your cat just drank water from its bowl or something. These are not necessarily going to change the world, but the point is, you're starting with something very simple that's snapped together in circuitry, and kids are actually learning circuitry and learning about how circuits work with light and sound and little motors. And then you put a little bit on it, suddenly this thing here, which is just kind of physical and electrical, is connected to the internet, and you suddenly see a potential to really do some extra interesting stuff with it. Digital conversion station. Okay. I talked about our scanner being too popular and that we don't have good scanning in the rest of the library. I won't go into that again. It's still a problem. It's a year later. Even now we have scanners on all of our copiers, which we didn't have when we first opened. The scanners and the copiers are a pain in the butt. The sending the emails is a pain in the butt. It's just a pain. It's too library-like. It's kind of hard and a pain, and it's just not easy. Whereas our scanner sits there, you scan, you see the screen, you send the email like you would at home. Right? It's like a home experience versus sort of an institutional experience. So everybody wants to use our scanner still, unfortunately. And we cope with that. We have the VHS to DVD converter, and what this brings up is copyright questions. We've had several great, interesting conversations with copyright lawyers about what we can and can't do, what we can and can't show. We've talked to the local U of A library school professor who studied in the area. We've talked to a bunch of other people. At the end of the day, we're very comfortable with the VHS to DVD because form shifting is allowed for personal private use. We have no concerns about that. We had a lot more concerns. We actually bought a turntable, which is going to be for turntable to conversion. And there's going to be some serious questions about the legality of that, so that actually isn't out yet. When we open the sound booth, we're going to put the turntable in the sound booth for people to work in that context, but not to put a turntable under something called digital conversion station. It just seemed like that was potentially too overtly going to get us in trouble. Although one of the things the lawyer said, and I thought it was a great point. Now this is a lawyer who's very much on the side of users' rights rather than the side of industrial control, so he's got a bias, as all lawyers do. He basically said, just do it. His underlying message was just do it. What he's basically saying is assert practice, because practice becomes standard, becomes law ultimately. So it's very important not to overly self-censor yourself, not to do it out of fear of something that might happen. If it seems like it might be reasonable, he's arguing that you should do it and establish it as a norm and say, well, we've been doing it for years. I mean, it's kind of funny. So he's not actually saying break the law, but what he is saying is push the law and don't let fear of ambiguity in copyright law stop you from doing stuff. Obviously, if it's clearly illegal, you don't do it. I mean, we get that. But anyway, I thought that was a very interesting point. So coming out of this, that has been our biggest challenge. Where some copyright questions and the scanner just always getting used more than a scanner used to get used. Staffing and training, okay. I talked about the Makerspace, that's Connie, one of our other Makerspace assistants with a school group. Yeah, in front of the espresso book machine. And as usual, they're a pretty engaged looking group generally, although this person down here is looking at it. But anyway, pretty engaged looking group, and as usual, we're on Twitter. Just can't help ourselves. This is so, and the beauty of this is the school. So the best kind of tweet is not us telling the world how cool we are. That's really not great. That's just like stroking your own back. This is a school group who came and visited us and then tweeted everybody in their followers. I mean, they may only have 12 followers for all I know. I don't care. The reality is they're talking about us in a very positive light, and that puts us into the circle of everybody who follows them, and that's real value as opposed to us talking about ourselves, which is to me always much, much less valuable. Staffing, the big challenge with staffing has been the training aspect. So we have our 4 Makerspace assistants who are great and came to us with a lot of skills and still needed a lot of training. To cope with our volume, we actually have, from the rest of the library, we have a staff person who's really 5 staff people, each doing a shift a week, who for a while were 10 staff people doing a shift every 2 weeks. And they got to be highly problematic because 10 people, and if your shift is only once every 2 weeks, they simply felt they didn't know enough. And we tried to train, but even if you train them and then you don't do it for 2 weeks, you miss a shift, you don't show up for a month, in a highly technical, complex changing area, it was problematic. So we've actually gone from having that other department provide that one person be at 10 people to be one person be at 5 people, so we could focus on the training. It just was becoming a problem for us. So training is an ongoing serious challenge for us, no doubt about it. That's one of the hardest things about working in the space is keeping people up to date. And of course, there's always our programs. Let's get this. Okay, I didn't know I had a picture. That's the Lego robotics guitar, and it actually, depending where you hit the little thing, it makes a difference that it actually works. And those 2 kids made it. I couldn't have made it, but those 2 kids came into the library and made it. You know they told their friends about it, and you know their friends think of the library differently because they were told about it. So, what's that? Well, for League of Legends again. Here's just this is just off our website, just a screenshot of a couple of, so this is the example of, this is a few months back now, Scratch Game Design and Programming Club. So using Scratch as a very simple web-based programming tool to teach kids about creating a very, very simple game. Music Making Mondays with iHuman, that's a local agency. A guy came in there and for 7 sessions taught people how to make electronic music and modify and mix beats and do that kind of cool stuff. So the first one is taught by us, the second one is a guest, the third one is our regular intro to 3D printing, the fourth one is just a hosted event where Concordia University out of Montreal approached us and said, we'd like to do a, what do they call it, a street cafe, can we do it in the Makerspace? Not sure how they heard about us, but they heard about us and we hosted their event. So it was sort of relevant. It's sort of relevant. I was part of it. It was less relevant than I thought. But anyway. Okay, so this is another example of stuff going on. So Makerspace Evil Genius Club, which is really just to drop in and play with cool stuff. We put out a club. Hasn't taken off as much as we hoped yet so far. Books to film. We just show a movie in the space every Friday afternoon. Once our program room is done, that will stop happening. We'll show it in the adjacent program room so we don't have to shut everything down to show a movie. But we had the projector in the screen, and I said, of course, we would help them if we did it. And our robotics every Saturday, really, really popular program. That's just such a great, popular, consistent program. That's Enoch from iHuman. Policies. Okay, I've touched on some of our policies already and some of the challenges. I think I may have said in most of these. I think I've talked about the tours already. Okay, well, yeah, one of the interesting things that we've discovered with our, news, yes, okay, yeah. One of the things we discovered is when we change the rules, or when our computers act differently, we learn about things that people have wanted to do in the library that couldn't. So they want to plug things into our computers and download things and interact with our devices in a way that our lockdown machines don't allow. So we've discovered that our existing infrastructure prevented activities that people wanted. We've discovered now that people want to do those things, and the question is pushed back to our IT group, okay, how can we now do this everywhere in our 500-odd public PCs throughout our multiple buildings? So we've discovered interesting things in that. We've already talked about the policy of Facebook and the library cards and the M games and a lot of the other policies we had to do. One of the policies, what will we not print on 3D printer? We don't care about printing news. This is actually, the one on the left is a sculpture done by Keith Turnbull, who's a former director at the library, who's now retired as a sculptor, whatever. And on the right, he 3D scanned his sculpture and then 3D printed his sculpture. So that's what that represents. That's the original sculpture, a 3D scan of the sculpture, and a 3D printed the sculpture. He just wanted to try that as an experiment to see. So we're totally comfortable with nudes. Obviously illegal stuff, so pornography, which is hard to define, child pornography would clearly not be allowed. We will not print on the 3D printer weapons, drug paraphernalia, or parts of weapons and drug paraphernalia, which seems pretty obvious. I would think, relatively, because those things are illegal. You're not allowed to have those things, so that's easy. But then you get into the question of somebody saying, well, that's a letter opener, not a knife. Or that's the handle of a knife, not the knife itself. And so we've had, when you actually, it's really saying, we're not going to print weapons. We say, well, that's not a weapon, it's a, and so then we have a conversation, we try to work it out, we try to figure out what's going on. We had somebody who's printing brass knuckles. They said it was just for, they said it was for their belt. We we had a little debate about that, and we, in the end, I think we actually, that one got through, but we decided from then on we weren't going to do grass knuckles. And those are the funny little things you just have to deal with. You can't anticipate every unusual request, but we responded to them as best we can. Until, brass knuckles. That I was not expecting. Okay. One of our challenges is stuff breaks. Stuff has to be replaced. Stuff gets stolen occasionally. All of those things are just normal. That stuff happens. Pricing. I talked about it a little bit yesterday with base. Those are all the nice colors we offer. Okay, good. Pricing, we basically charge for filament, so it's cost recovery for the 3D printers and it's cost recovery for the book printing. Everything else in the space is free. You don't need a card. You don't want it to cost you anything to use all the services. If we have an actual, real, hard material cost, we pass that on to you, and that's it. And we pass it on at the most minimal level. So we are clearly losing money. This is not a profit center, and this will never be a profit center, at least while I'm managing. Community and partnerships. This is an interesting example. That's one of our lit band guys, Andy, who's in the space often, helping out when he's not out in the lit band. And Sandra, who's a local person who's in the space a lot, a great story. She is really into Photoshop and photography. So she's often in the space doing photos, working with the green screen and doing Photoshop. But when she's doing that, she takes pictures of other people who just happen to be there and she gets in conversations with and then teaches them about Photoshop and photography. So this is the perfect scenario where a member of the public comes in with an interest and engages other members of the public who then learn cool stuff, and all we did was open the doors. It is the perfect scenario, and that's the kind of community engagement, community partnership, other people coming to our space, teaching other people, meeting people in the space. That's exactly what we hope to see happen more and more and more as the space moves forward. So, yeah, that's a funny one. Let's see here. We've had, so many people, local photographer, a local 3D scanning lady. She was really trying to create her own 3D scanning business. She hung out in the space a lot, was scanning people with her Xbox Connect and showing them how to modify their scanned images. So we usually have a little 3D scan of Ben or Makerspace that isn't sitting by the 3D printer. Every once in a while people steal Ben. We're not sure why. We print another Ben. Don't know why. And Ben's a reasonable looking guy, but honestly it's not that good a scan. I'm not sure why people are stealing it.